Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Yeah. Hello there. Welcome to the, whatever this is. Oh, man. I didn't realize that the Tylenol scare back there in the early 80s, I didn't remember that had never been solved. It's never been solved. When some unlucky people in Chicago bought Tylenol, went home and took it, and died of cyanide poisoning because the bottles had been tampered with and poisoned. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is I just read the obituary of the man who was the main suspect, but they never could get any evidence to pin it on him. And he's now dead, age of 76. And reading the obituary, whoa. I mean, the last line of it is the Illinois State Police say that the investigation is still ongoing over 40 years later. Remember how scared everybody was? 7 people died. A lot of people got scared to death. It changed the way, if you ever grumble when trying to open a medicine bottle, you can thank the perpetrator of this crime, because Johnson & Johnson that made Tylenol, obviously it recalled all of the bottles of Tylenol that were out there. 31 million bottles, retail value of more than $100 million. Sold all its television commercials, offered a $100,000 reward for anyone with information leading to the conviction of the perpetrator. Didn't get collected by anybody. And then 6 weeks after they pulled all the bottles, Johnson & Johnson came up with a solution, and that was a new bottle, which we now know as the bottle on all medicines. Cotton wad, foil seal, child-proof cap, plastic strip, all of it. And then the FDA later made that an industry standard, requiring that kind of tamper-resistant. But all because of someone still unknown in 1982. Probably this guy. His name was James Lewis. He ended up doing 12 years in federal prison in relation to the case, but not for murder. And he was never charged. But a few months, I think, after the deaths, he wrote an extortion letter to Johnson & Johnson and said he would stop killing if they gave him $1 million. That was what he was convicted of, extortion, and served 12 years. This is not a good guy. Before all this, 4 years before the Tylenol, he was charged with murder. He was a tax accountant. It's all very unlikely. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done a movie. You know, this sort of a bespectacled, bearded, nerdy-looking tax accountant, and he was convicted of murdering, dismembering. One of his clients, who I guess he said had paid him with a forged check. The guy's body was found hanging from a pulley in his attic. This guy, I mean, it reads like something out of Psycho, his obit. What's amazing is he never served time for this murder, which is 4 years before the Tylenol poisonings, because a judge threw out his conviction because he wasn't informed of his rights at the time of his arrest. For want of the cops apparently reading him the Miranda warning, he got away with that murder, that gruesome murder. And then he had some other run-ins, mail fraud, other stuff leading up to the Tylenol thing. Unbelievable. Moves to Massachusetts, out of Chicago. Moves to Massachusetts, and he wasn't even in Chicago. I have no idea. Anyway, and he ends up getting arrested there for rape and all kinds of, just a horrible human being, probably was the one who did it, but no one could ever prove it. And you can bet that there was a great effort, and as the obit suggests, an ongoing effort to find and prove who tampered with that Tylenol in 1982 and put cyanide in it. Anyway, he's dead, 76 years old, died in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry. I mean, that was just because I had just read that the show began. I was in my car yesterday, and I have, that Sirius XM satellite radio, and it was on, I don't know, MSNBC or CNN. I think it was CNN. There was a woman, anchor. This would be in the morning. I have no idea who she is. And she was talking about the flooding in Vermont. And she kept saying, let me see if I can get this right. In the Vermont capital of Montpelier, she said. And I said out loud, Montpelier? What? This ain't France. I mean, my memory from learning the capitals when I was in grade school is that's Montpelier. Like a good American pronunciation. Montpelier, Vermont. And she kept saying Montpelier. And then she went to, she threw it from the anchor desk to the CNN reporter on the scene. And I was hoping that he would say Montpelier, just as a, nudge to her that she was. I mean, how do you anchor at CNN and mispronounce a place name like that? One of the things you do when you're an anchor person is you make sure you know how to pronounce place names. And I mean, she would have been fine if she was, in Marseille, or Marseilles, as we say around here. But I was really shocked by that. I haven't heard, I usually look to those anchors when I don't know how to pronounce a politician's name or something, I'm always grateful when I hear them pronounce it, and I assume they know how to pronounce it properly. Anyway, just to double check this morning, I did Google. How do you pronounce Montpelier? And here's what I got. And this is from a Vermont resident of 40 plus years. And here's what he says. I mean, she definitely was incorrect, as I suspected. But he says, never tell a Frenchman how we pronounce it. Most common pronunciation is Montpelier. Montpelier. So I was wrong too. Montpelier is how Vermonters pronounce it. Montpelier. He says, I agree that Montpelier is somewhat common, but I think Montpelier is definitely the variation most often used here. And there's a bunch of French towns names, place names around there, like Calais, Calais. And he says, God knows we don't pronounce it that way. We pronounce it Callus, East Callus, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of French names, but given that, obvious American, like North Versailles. I remember just absolutely freaking out when I moved here. And, when I moved here, I did have to learn how to pronounce things properly. And that was one of the ones that, thank God I checked. North Versailles. So, just saying. I was looking at City Paper, and they have jobs available in town. They post certain jobs, and guess who's looking for somebody? They want a talk show host at KDKA. Just telling you, if you've ever wanted to give it a shot, over there at KDKA, no less. They are looking for, says here, a great storyteller with an engaging personality, unique thoughts and opinions, great range as an interviewer, and the ability to be a good neighbor for the community. Not sure what that means. And here's what I know about. I don't listen to them. The few times I've tuned in the last 10 years, I've lasted about 2 seconds before I howlingly find something else. I would suggest to them that I don't know what spot they're looking for, but some of the people who they have on now are anything but great storytellers with engaging personalities and great interviewers. Jeez. Anyway, here's my guess, and I think it's is this a part-time position? So maybe it's not filling one of the. It's a part-time talk show host, which means a filler-inner. Now, I had the dubious honor of being, I guess, a part-time host for them after WTAE, where I had been a talk show host, went to sports talk, and I was momentarily without employment. And KDKA said, you come on over here, we'll give you my memory is I just had a show on Saturday, is my memory, a 3-hour show. And you know what they paid me? $100. $100. Did not like being there. And then when I was offered a job to have a full-time talk show again at WPTT, and I went in to tell the general manager that I'd be leaving, he laughed at me. He said, "You're leaving us, the grand KDKA, for a 5,000 watt AM station that hasn't even done talk before? You'll have an audience of 3 people. What the heck would you do that for?" And I don't recall what I said to him, but I mean, it's a full-time job, number one, and I'd make more than $100, number two, and I'd have the opportunity to build an audience from scratch. Whatever. Oh my God. So anyway, they're looking. Says they want a part-time talk show host. Don't expect to get paid, but they sure want a lot. They want a real pro, obviously. Just passing that on. And Katie, you can thank me for that if you find somebody. Maybe. I mean, through me. Anyway, all right, enough. I want to share with you some emails that I received, 2 in particular, that I received, because one I got last week while I was on vacation, and it was such a delight to reacquaint myself with this gentleman who used to take part in the give and take of this program for a long time and was a valued contributor. And that would be Father Joseph Gardner, who, if you recall, had spent his career as a military chaplain, I believe in the Air Force. He was a Orthodox priest, which is to say he was able to be married and he had children. His 2 sons graduated from the Coast Guard Academy together a year or so ago. And he had sent me this wonderful picture, which I think I shared with you, of President Biden standing with him and his 2 sons at the ceremony where Biden had apparently given this speech. And Father Joseph left town and to go into the business world. And he reports back that he's doing well, but is busy and doesn't have time. But he says, "I'm not so busy that I won't keep my eye on politics." He sent me this. So for your perusal, I offer some musings from a Pittsburgh expat and Cullen Show fan. And he starts out with the Supreme Court, on, knocking off affirmative action in universities and colleges, which I don't believe I talked about myself. I mean, it was not a surprise. They were going to do it, just as they were going to knock off Biden's student loan forgiveness program. Those justices never miss an opportunity to kick people who are striving to get ahead, to kick them down a rung or 2. They just never seem. They cannot find it. You would think there's never, I can't imagine what would be a compelling argument for them. They sure seem to have a lot of sympathy for the rich, corporations. That there's empathy. But for people who are not in that stratosphere of already having much, the ones who strive, they don't have an ounce of understanding. Anyway, I'll shut up and go back to Father Joseph here. And his first take, and it's absolutely right, I thought of this too. He said historically black colleges and universities are going to get a bittersweet benefit from this ruling. From obviously students who might now focus on them as opposed to Harvard and Yale. But he says, however, those students who tended to turn to the historically black colleges and universities as their best chance of getting a college education may now have less opportunities available due to the fact that other candidates that would have had a shot at Yale or Harvard will now be taking positions instead at historically black colleges and universities. So again, further pushing people who are trying to get in the door out. And he said, and this decision could have an impact far beyond education. Minority businesses may find doors closed to opportunities that were open to them due to affirmative action efforts. Those cheering this decision may not cheer so much when they find their child can't get in due to preference for legacy applicants or wealthy people buying their kids' way in, or an influx of folks who don't look like them but have access to excellent middle and high school education. And then in regard to the student loan decision, he says Congress has the power of the purse. And this was an uphill struggle right out of the gate for the Biden administration. If you want the Republicans on board, tie loan reduction to military service or some other form of public service. Some of this is already being done. And secondly, focus on the cost of education. That's something that everyone finds overwhelming. And then he goes on, which for him, because he's such a sort of mild-mannered, even-tempered guy, he goes on a rant when he decides to share his thoughts on Trump. Trump's grip on GOP voters. He says this: despite it all, Trump still looks strong. Why? Well, let's consider something totally anecdotal. The presence of those rather obnoxious Trump flags flying in front of so many houses. Where are the Biden flags? I mean, I have a theory why we don't see Biden flags. Progressives think about issues rather than engage in cult worship. We don't mistrust government, but expect it to act on our behalf for the good of all. And we don't believe people are unpatriotic if they say there are some systemic issues of injustice in our nation. We know federal regulation does a lot of good, like desegregation of schools, care for the environment, empowering women. We tend toward intelligent dialogue rather than thoughtless bluster. And we don't accuse someone of hating America if they disagree with us. We don't tell them to leave our country, and we don't question the legitimacy of presidents as citizens. We don't fly flags or banners with swear words about presidents we don't like, or have flags with a president's head and Rambo's body. We tend not to be, insane. We believe this nation is bigger than any one person, yet we also passionately believe every human being matters. We believe in helping the tired, the weak, the huddled masses. And then one more fuselage from our priest. Contrast this view with belief in one unqualified person who will save America, which is code for finding a leader who perpetuates a false history that suggests that there aren't any injustices at all. Discrimination is okay if you are the wrong color, religion, or ethnicity. Science is all about controlling our liberties. And if the right doesn't win an election, it's because the election was rigged. The biggest irony is that some of those houses that proudly fly Trump flags are so focused on preventing any cultural change or social change that they are willing to let their environment deteriorate, food go unharvested due to a lack of migrant workers who seek a better life. And I guess those guys flying the Trump flags are also fine with wealth continuing to flow to the top 1% of our nation to the detriment of everyone else. All of this is okay as long as people are fired for not standing for the national anthem. And as long as kids don't learn about America's mistakes in history as well as its successes. That's from Father Joseph. I read it to you because I thought it was a really good rant and I miss his voice. You know who else I miss? Does anyone know where? Remember, oh, please. Cullen, don't do this. Don't do this. I miss him and all of a sudden his name has just disappeared. Mike. He started out as Mike in D.C., and then he was Mike in Upper St. Clair, and then he was Mike somewhere in Florida, wasn't he? And then he moved to Pittsburgh, and he was Mike here, and then he's disappeared. He was a wonderful addition to the program, and if anybody knows, what happens is I worry about people. I worry about people. I just want to know he's okay. Okay. If anybody knows. And while mentioning Father Joseph's rant about the Republicans who are just appalled that anyone would suggest that there's systemic injustice or racism in this country, and that any attempt to teach that to our children should be suppressed. I have this that I came across. It just blew me away. This is from someone who grew up in Virginia and probably middle-aged, or my age, which is beyond middle age. She says, I well remember my 4th grade Virginia history textbook. And I recently came across a well-worn copy. There is a picture of a Black family arriving from Africa and shaking hands with their new owner. The Black family is nicely dressed in the American fashion of the time and carrying a suitcase. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? This is what they want us to go back teaching our kids. And she went on to say, schools were still segregated in my elementary school years, but the Black school down the road used the same textbook. I can only imagine how Black students felt having to tolerate this depiction of what their families had endured. Speaking of things that make students uncomfortable. Because that's the Florida law now. The reason you can't teach the truth is because it makes white kids uncomfortable. God. Okay. One more. And this came in this morning, and I read it right off the bat, and I don't even know how to respond. Let me read it. Lynn, I am a young male, and for the bulk of my 20 years, I've thought information, language, and media to be paramount. I am curious and want your perspective on some things. I'll ask them here. How do you think ChatGPT will impact journalism? Well, just a quick answer. Not well. Has social media affected news in any way? Oh, yeah, big or small, positive or negative. I have to tell you that the ad that KDKA put out for their talk show host also had another requirement. It said that the host, besides being this brilliant, opinionated, engaging storyteller, interviewer, blah, 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 who could live on $100, they want this person to be adept and have a large presence on social media. So let me tell you, reporters now that work in television, and I suppose print, they now have, in addition to the responsibilities that reporters have always had, to be a presence on social media. That is, what that does is dilute their energies and their focus and their attention, just right there. He says, how to best parse the facts today in an age of deep fakes. I don't have a clue. You know, I have found myself when I see a picture that just seems incongruous, I don't know anymore, because I am aware of the ability to create pictures that are false, that what I grew up thinking, you know, that if I'm looking at it, there it is, it's true. There's a picture of it, it's true. I find myself unwilling to believe almost anything anymore until I find a secondary source that I trust that says it's true. And this total lack of the ability to trust journalistic sources, any source, is a very bad development, because it means there's no sense of common. We don't have the same set of common facts and reality, where some are off deciding that some craziness is reality, some are off over here. I don't know how you establish community in any form. Okay, and then I'll just go on without comment, maybe. He said in 2010, cursive was pruned from American classrooms, culled from the syllabus, and is no longer a standard for K through 12 public schools under Common Core. As our laptops replace paper, keyboard typing is now the main focus in schools, as handwriting is practiced very little, as it's inevitably being phased out. What do you think will become of the English language in, say, the next 5 generations and beyond? Will communication dissolve into the use of only emojis as words and sentences disappear? And then he points out something I saw. There was a judge in Canada who recently ruled that a thumbs up emoji constitutes a legal contract. Somebody was sent a proposal. They responded with a up thumb emoji, and then later said, I was just saying, yeah, okay, I got it. I wasn't saying I agree to it. Anyway, I went to court, and the judge said, you agreed to it with a thumbs up emoji. What does this mean? Says Zach. What does this mean for written media? Will headlines be a series of emojis to express current events? Well, yeah, okay, shut up. And then, how will anybody make money after automation rules the job market? People who will, likely be seen as inferior workers due to, requiring things like pay, bathroom breaks, regular pauses for meals, sleep, vacation time, holidays. They're prone to illness, needing a certain level of comfort and, human rights. Because a fully automated workforce can simply run forever without asking for those needs that humans require to be met. The only delay would be infrequent glitches and mishaps, which can quickly be corrected by occasional new wiring or updates. This would still be more efficient than humans. Where will we get our income? And then he says, since students now use ChatGPT to write an entire thesis from merely plugging in simple one-word commands and details, while AI scours the web to round out the assignment, I can't help but think journalists will no longer be needed either. It will only require an individual from an administrative position to spend 10 seconds at the computer to simply log the basic facts, while the rest of the report is auto-generated and literally writes itself. As I see it, all other workers who aren't programmers will quickly be rendered obsolete, jobless, ultimately homeless, hungry. And that is until the computers learn to reprogram and heal themselves. And then IT developers will also be on the streets. He says, drawing back to the initial topic of news, I believe media has greatly regressed as I have adolesced. Zach, such a good writer. You're a better writer than any friggin' machine. He says it's left me dispirited. I thank you tremendously for your time. I wish to leave you with my warmest feelings, my sincerity, and all the best regards. I cried. 20 years old. So, here's something that really, this is from the New York Times today. You know how the Earth, as we know it and have studied it, that the scientists have figured that despite what the Bible says, the Earth has been around for over 4.5 billion years. And those archaeologists, geologists, paleontologists, whateverologists, they have, as you know, in studying the Earth's history, divided it into periods or epochs. It's an epoch, I think, epoch. So there's the Cambrian, the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, and I guess now we're in something called the Holocene, Holocene, which they have decided began in about 11,700 years ago. But and that is when science, as far as it can ascertain, that it was 11,700 years ago that the conditions for humans to create complex civilizations had emerged. So stop and think about that. The Earth is over 4.5 billion years old, and the scientists are saying, if you made a timeline, it's just in this last little sliver, 11,700 years ago, that the conditions for our species to even, get together and figure some things out and create stuff and build stuff, which we've continued to do. And believe it or not, there are scientists now, because we have speeded things up so much, we humans, that are suggesting that the Holocene is ending, which would make it one of the quickest little epochs without a doubt, in history, and that it is being replaced by something that they've already determined will be called the Anthropocene. And they've been working, these scientists, for over 15 years, panels of them, to come to an agreement of when to make this demarcation. And you can imagine, fights have broken out. The geologists are up in arms because they're saying, hey, you can't do this with this quickly. Man can't have this kind of impact. But we're looking around and seeing the impact that man has had since he started being able to have an impact, which was starting just 11,700 years ago. And so this panel has now decided that we have transformed the Earth so much that we have either already or soon will plunge the Earth into a new interval of geologic time, that we are literally changing the physical nature of the planet. Geologists are much more hesitant because this is way too quick. No matter how consequential humans have been, they just can't get on board yet. But it was 5 years ago, that the panel, the scientists, international group, agreed, after debating for a decade, to recommend that the new epoch began in the mid-20th century. That's what they're thinking. I was born in the mid-20th century. They're saying that is when I guess the beginning of the end is what I'm thinking. Because that is when globalization, industrialization, and energy consumption started accelerating at this extraordinary rate. Anyway, I had no idea that such a thing was in the offing. And I just want to say that it dovetails nicely with my latest haranguing about humans and the negative impact we have had on this planet. And ultimately life on this planet, including our own. Which is why I now will... I've been sitting on this. This is an article that's, a month old. And it's about the singularity. The singularity is when, is what I'm thinking is right around the corner, if not already here, where humans become obsolete. And in this article, they quote one of the most despicable humans on earth, Elon Musk, who said this: the advent of artificial general intelligence is called the singularity because it is so hard to predict what will happen after it. And he went on to say he thinks it'll be an age of abundance. But then he acknowledged that there was, quote, some chance that it will destroy humankind. How'd you like to flip that coin? He thinks it'll usher in an age of abundance, but he acknowledges that it could, in his words, destroy humankind. And then you get one of the biggest cheerleaders for artificial intelligence, a guy named Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, which is behind the Chat GPT. And even he signed that letter begging the government to try to slow this down, saying that artificial intelligence should be a global priority like pandemics and nuclear war. This cheerleader for AI says we've got to mitigate the risk of extinction. While they continue to compete against each other to make money out of this stuff. Listen to what this Altman guy said in 2016 when he knew he was seeing a potential future that he was eager to see for some reason. And he admitted that he was amassing guns, gold, potassium iodide, antibiotics, batteries, water, and gas masks, and a big, big piece of land in Big Sur that he can run off to, some bunker somewhere. These are the guys. And I also want to point out, so artificial intelligence and the singularity is already, I mean, everybody acknowledges it's irreversible. Cat out of the bag. Cat out of the bag. Pandora's box been open. And stopping it would require, this is Altman again, the guy who's with the batteries of potassium iodide in the gold. He says stopping it would require something like a global surveillance regime. And even if that would be gotten together, it isn't guaranteed it could work. Because everybody knows the government is too slow and frankly too stupid to oversee this kind of fast breaking technological tsunami. And I just want to add this. Despite all the talk of artificial intelligence being an unlimited wealth generating machine, the people who are going to get rich off it are pretty much the same guys who are already rich. So, Zach, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how anyone who's lived a long life already can have any idea the world you will live in. And, you know, maybe we're being a little Cassandra-ish, but I don't think so. On so many levels. I don't know what to say. And then you look at, you know, Montpelier, the flooding, the 110 degree temperatures for going on 2 weeks now in Arizona and other places. People are saying, have any of you been to the Atlantic coast this year? Have you gone into the water? Because people are saying that it's strangely warm. I used to sort of not like being in the ocean because it was so cold. Well, now's the time to get in because it is truly heating up. And who is this that I'm reading here? A guy named John Hendrickson, who writes for The Atlantic, said, in Austin, Texas this week, a local playground slide was 130 degrees. Any kid who went down that slide was going to have second-degree burns within seconds. In the Florida Keys last night, the sea surface temperature came close to 97 degrees. On Saturday, the Northwest Territories of Canada, up near the Arctic Ocean, were higher than the Keys. 100 degrees. And this guy says what we all feel. He says all of these facts, these numbers, they just start blurring. Because when everything is a disaster, you become numb. We're numb to the climate change news. And, 110 degrees in Phoenix and 54 million Americans living under these triple-digit weather. It is inconvenient and awful, but it's deadly. It's lethal. Some guy, a reporter, climate journalist, went down to Phoenix and decided to walk 10 blocks. The temperature was 115. He said, after walking 3 blocks, I felt dizzy. After 7 blocks, my heart was pounding. After 10, I thought I was a goner. So, climate change is leading to these anomalous events and warmth around the planet, the land surface, the oceans. And warmer oceans mean more moisture in the atmosphere that produces huge rainfalls, which produce the flooding. Here's a climate scientist. Because the question is, what are we supposed to do? Us. And he says we should understand that the choice is ours. We can make it much worse by continuing our reliance on fossil fuels, or we can rapidly decarbonize our economy, prevent a worsening of many, if not all, of these impacts, and remain within our collective adaptive capacity as a civilization. Well, having watched humans fail to be proactive throughout my lifetime, I'm not going to. I don't know if, am I blanking on your name? Is it Adrian? If you are listening, Adrian, call in right now. I don't have a lot of time, but this dovetails with what one of you has sent me she's very concerned about all of this, and she's got a great logo which she has created using a cartoon-like manatee, who, by the way, are really suffering in Florida. They're dying left, right, and center. And she named the manatee Hugh. So it's Hugh Manatee. And she wrote me saying, how do we get this out there? And, I suppose she wants to use it for a, some environment, sort of like Smokey the Bear is what she said. I don't know. I told her she could call in sometime, but would be a good time. Humanity. Do you think Smokey the Bear did any good? Tell you what, Smokey the Bear would have a conniption if he saw what was going on now. So, I guess that's it. I thank you for being here. I feel like I need to apologize after every program because it's all so depressing. And I have lost my ability to even bother looking at the political crap. I just can't. It seems to pale. Where I used to really follow the latest going on with, all the Trump cases or what's happening in the Congress. I do not, and I cannot. It's too maddening. So, I am sorry. Problem is, my job is to tell it like I see it, and what I see is nightmares. Okay, have a good one. Have a good one. Head into whatever bubble you get into to make it through, and have a good one. I'm not kidding. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.